Hi. Welcome to Spoiler Lab. After a family tragedy, a girl thinks she is a cyborg. She eats batteries and talks to electrical devices. Today we will recap the story of the 2006 movie I'm a Cyborg, but that's okay. The main character Yang Gun works in a factory making radio equipment. Every day, she performs a set of actions, which is dictated to her by an automatic voice from a small radio receiver. The girl doesn't give much thought to the meaning of her existence, because she is just like all the other workers on the conveyor line. She has only a few functions: to assemble the radio receiver and return home to her grandmother after a long shift. One day, Yang Gun hears a new task that the voice from the receiver tells her to do. She must cut her wrist with a knife, insert the bare wires inside herself, secure everything with duct tape, and turn on the plug in the outlet. After that, the girl falls to the floor in convulsions, and her toes begin to glow with multicolored lights, indicating the level of charging of her body. This is the scene that Yang Gun's imagination showed. In fact, the girl, not realizing it herself, was trying to end her life, after which she was placed in a psychiatric hospital for involuntary treatment. Yang Gun's attending physician decides to question the girl's apathetic mother to determine the source of her psychosis. The woman admits that she was unaware of her daughter's condition because she was too busy working in a restaurant. Since childhood, the girl was raised by her mentally ill grandmother. The tired woman had been chopping vegetables all her life and at one point decided she was a mother of mice and started eating radishes incessantly. Because of this, the old woman's house had an unbearable smell and they decided to send her to a nursing home. For Yang Gun, her grandmother was the closest thing to family and she did not notice the elderly woman's strangeness, so her departure had a devastating effect on the girl's psyche. When Yang Gun wakes up in a mental hospital, a chatty neighbor gives her a tour of the facility and tells her stories about other patients. 10 years ago, a guy named Oh Dong-soo went missing here. He was thin and pale and tormented by incessant hiccups. The staff, the military, and the police searched for him everywhere, even with dogs up in the mountains, fearing that he might harm civilians. After a week of searching, they realized that a grandfather clock in the hospital corridor was making a hiccuping sounds. Comfortably settled in, the sick man found his eternal rest there and now the echoes of his hiccups can be heard in every clatter of the clock. The neighbor brings Yang Gun's bed into the lounge and introduces her to the resident patients. A guy named Il-sun wears a rabbit mask all the time. He is said to have been quite handsome. But after he was abused in the army, he became violent. He blamed it on his handsome face and burned it with cigarette butts. A woman turns Yang Gun's face toward a farmer from North Korea. All his life he has been a quiet, lonely bachelor, kind to everyone in the village. Later, he fell in love with a calf named Ginny. He took him to his room, where they listened to the radio together and had a good time. Although he loved Ginny only platonically, the townspeople thought he was crazy and sent him to therapy. An anxious doctor runs up to Yang Gun's bunk and pulls the neighbor away from her. She explains to her new patient that her neighbor suffers from mythomania. All the stories she tells are lies. The woman loses her memory every time she receives shock therapy, so the disease forces her to make up different tales to replace her real memories. But Yang Gun has no reaction to her mentally ill neighbor's stories, nor to the doctor's words, and remains silent. When they take her back to her room, the guy in the rabbit mask looks at her with interest. He reveals his face for a moment, which turns out to be completely unharmed. The doctors are at a loss as to how to reach the unusual girl, who has been indifferent to everything around her for days. What they do not know is that the girl secretly leaves the ward at night. Before going to bed, Il-sun is carefully brushing his teeth when suddenly he hears a female voice in the hallway. The boy discovers Yang Gun, mesmerized, chatting with a beverage dispenser. The girl asks the machine how her day was and asks to share a cup of tea. She doesn't notice Il-sun sneaking up on her and shoving a coin into the machine to make the device work. Back in her room, she excitedly tells the glowing electric lamp her story. When men in white coats forcibly took her grandmother into the ambulance, Yang Gun chased her on a bicycle. The old woman didn't have time to take her dentures, without which she couldn't eat her favorite radishes. Unfortunately, the speed of the bicycle wasn't fast enough to catch up with the ambulance. Then Yang Gun decided that she was a cyborg and her mission was to get revenge on the men in white. To achieve her goal, she decided to recharge herself by listening to training instructions from the radio in the factory. Now, finding herself in the hospital, she has lost her power source and is left with only one glowing finger. In the end, the girl fearfully admits to her machine friends that she does not know her main purpose and does not understand why she was made a cyborg. In the hospital cafeteria, Yang Gun is approached by her pudgy roommate. The woman notices that the girl has been refusing food for days and offers to eat her portion so the orderlies won't force her to eat through a tube. While her roommate eats her lunch, Yang Gun pulls out a box of batteries and starts licking each one in an attempt to recharge. During a group psychotherapy session in the hospital yard, patients collectively complain to the doctor about Il-sun and ask that he be sent to the stabilization ward. They accuse him of stealing things that cannot be seen or touched with his hands. He stole the ability to play table tennis from one patient, a healthy appetite from another, and a memory from a third. To hide from the patient's attacks, he puts on a mask and immerses himself in his world, in which he is invisible to everyone. The boy used to have parents who did not notice him even when he was around. Il-sun's mother abandoned him when he was 15, telling him to brush his teeth thoroughly before going to bed. Since then, he has carried a homemade box with her picture on it, hating his mother and missing her at the same time. Because of his childhood traumas, the young man is afraid of turning into a dot and disappearing from the face of the earth unnoticed. In order not to lose himself, he is forced to wear a mask and steal other people's things. However, by court order, Il-sun was a common thief suffering from kleptomania. He was sent to a mental hospital so that he could be cured of his affliction. The guy can't empathize with people, but he has learned how to help patients by stealing their identities. For example, he helped one patient get rid of excessive politeness and modesty. This poor man felt that he was to blame for something going wrong. One day he drove by a car accident and started apologizing to all the victims, feeling guilty. That's how he ended up in the asylum, where Il-sun stole his obsessive politeness with an improvised ritual. Il-sun's habit of secretly adopting patients' problematic characteristics often makes him the target of ridicule. However, he only takes these problems away with the patient's permission and returns them to their owners after they are done with them. So he gave a man back his ability to play table tennis, saying that the secret to his success was scratching his butt during the match. The patient managed to win the match, but he developed a new obsession of scratching his butt. The amazing thief first gets Yang Gun's attention when he steals several pairs of panties from her. All the while, she continues to follow the radio's instructions and completely refuses to eat human food so as not to damage the sensitive cybernetic mechanism she has inside. She tries to do her best to conform to the cyborg image, but she can't get rid of her feelings and emotions. The girl sadly recalls how she decided to tell her mother that she was a cyborg. The woman was desperately afraid of scaring the customers of her restaurant, so she replied that being a robot is quite normal, as long as you don't tell anyone about it. Here, Yang Gun doubts her abilities and feels sorry for the doctors she has to destroy in order to save her grandmother. However, the radio advises her to get rid of her compassion in order to become a true cyborg. For this mission, Yang Gun decides to follow Il-sun. Convinced that the guy is a great thief, she asks him to steal her compassion. But he is unfamiliar with the feeling and doesn't understand exactly what he is supposed to steal. To solve this problem, he offers to set up surveillance on Yang Gun in order to study her feelings. But there is an important condition. The girl must hate him in order for him to have the urge to steal her compassion. The next day, Il-sun follows Yang Gun around to see the world through her eyes. She is communicating nonchalantly with electric appliances and eager to shake hands with everyone she meets, though she takes no pleasure in shaking hands. One day during dinner, the thief steals Yang Gun's grandmother's denture. After putting it on, the boy also tries to talk to the electric appliances, but no one answers him. By the end of the day, Il-sun records the most important observation about the girl: she doesn't eat anything. Yang Gun, on the other hand, is horrified to notice that her denture is missing and hysterically rushes through the hospital corridors trying to find the dear object. Soon, she collapses exhausted on the floor, trying to restore her energy balance with the help of batteries. In the morning, at a group meeting, the doctor asks the patients to talk about their most difficult breakup. Il-sun volunteers to speak first and recounts his mother's departure. He then tries to stealthily return Yang Gun's denture, but the girl literally grabs the thief's hand. She is furious with him and leaves him with a huge bruise on his face. At night, Yang Gun hears the call of electrical devices and sneaks into the boiler room. One of the devices reports that her grandmother has fallen into a coma. The girl's sobs are heard by Il-sun and she tries to find out the reason for her tears. After patiently listening to Yang Gun's incoherent mumblings, the boy learns the story of her grandmother. Choking back tears, Yang Gun begs Il-sun to steal her compassion. She punches the boy several times to prove her hatred to him. The thief smears green paint on her face, then counts to 5 and informs her that he has stolen her compassion. At the same moment, Yang Gun's face becomes emotionless and she heads confidently to the hospital wing to accomplish her mission. Upon seeing the men in white coats, the cyborg girl activates the weapons in her limbs and opens fire on the nursing staff. After a few moments, Yang Gun freezes and collapses to the floor with no power, reporting that her battery is dead. In reality, the girl faints from hunger in front of confused doctors and patients. The doctor guesses that her roommate has been eating her food for her all along. While Yang Gun lies unconscious in her room, the other patients continue to go about their daily business. Her chubby neighbor invents socks with which to float through the air. A lady with a baby voice rehearses songs for a contest and constantly looks into her pocket mirror because she is afraid of losing her beauty. Her friend dementedly believes he's been wearing an elastic belt since birth that can stretch infinite distances. Not all patients, however, behave as usual. Il-sun, who has stolen Yang Gun's identity, begins to experience an unaccustomed sense of compassion himself. He strikes up a conversation with one of the patients and reveals that he normally works as an electrician, which is how he earns his keep. After being involuntarily hospitalized, he was already returning to a life in society, but soon had to voluntarily surrender back to the asylum several times. Among ordinary people, he felt he was turning into a dot and might soon disappear. At the end of the conversation, Il-sun becomes quite small and, to the surprise of his companion, confesses that he is very worried about Yang Gun's condition. Meanwhile, the cyborg girl undergoes shock therapy, which is supposed to help her start eating. Although World Health Organization rules forbid the use of electroconvulsive therapy for minors, doctors try to influence her consciousness through her body in this way. After the procedure, the girl ends up in an incubator with numerous wires sticking out of her head. When she wakes up, she sees her grandmother in front of her, smiling at her amiably. The girl promises her grandmother to become ruthless as soon as possible and to get her out of the hospital. Yang Gun is sure that only she can help her, because all other relatives don't care about the old woman. Through the glass, the woman tries to tell her granddaughter the meaning of her existence, but Yang Gun cannot make out her words. The next time the girl comes to her senses is on the operating table. Her fingers glow like multicolored light bulbs again, signifying that she is fully charged. The girl licks her lips with pleasure, as if after a delicious meal. The attending doctor asks her various questions to test her memory. Yang Gun recalls meeting her grandmother and says that she was born too weak and was placed in an incubator at the time, too. Later, the doctor persistently tries to find out from the patient why she chose not to eat. She fears that the girl intends to end her life this way and wants to prevent a tragedy. But instead of an answer, Yang Gun smiles blissfully and sinks back into her phantasmagorical world. Noticing her friend in the hospital corridor, the happy Il-sun spreads his arms to the side for a hug, but Yang Gun dodges them. In her head, instructions from the radio tell her to become ruthless. In her imaginary world, Yang Gun fires back at her attending doctor. The cyborg girl then walks all over the hospital, destroying doctors and orderlies one by one. Shock therapy has not robbed her of her memory, but it has sharpened her sense of hatred for people in white. Also immersed in her friend's fantasies, Il-sun begins to feel like a little man again because of her inability to improve her state of mind. The guy has a nervous breakdown and begins obsessively brushing his teeth, while Yang Gun finds herself in a room with padded walls. Il-sun confesses to his attending doctor that Yang Gun's torment is destroying him. For the first time in his life, he feels such deep compassion for someone. To get his friend out of the stabilization ward, the guy instigates the patients to go on a hunger strike. But the riot quickly ends when an orderly informs the patients that they won't last longer than 3 days without food. Yang Gun's physical condition quickly deteriorates, and the doctors begin force-feeding her through a tube to keep her alive. After a while, the doctor tries to spoon-feed the patient, much to her consternation. The girl wants to shoot a bullet out of her finger, but her body is too weak and she can hardly move. At this time, Il-sun desperately tries to break into the stabilization room and begs the doctors to let his friend go. Taking advantage of everyone's confusion, Yang Gun induces vomiting and gets rid of the human food in her system. Il-sun is locked in a nearby stabilization chamber. Yang Gun makes a telephone out of 2 cups and string and passes the handset to her friend through the bars. The boy asks her to put on the magic socks and rub her feet hard against each other so that they begin to produce static electricity. When the girl feels herself starting to take off, Il-sun will cheer her on with a song. Yang Gun follows her friend's instructions and really takes off, listening to his cheerful singing. A huge ladybug lifts her bed up and she bursts out of the dreaded padded chamber. Like a feather, she floats through the air, traversing the celestial horizons. At the end of the journey, the girl's bunk lands in the middle of a green alpine meadow, where Il-sun is already waiting for her. Unlike the psychiatrists, the boy was able to guess that Yang Gun thinks she is a cyborg. He tries to convince his friend that robots can eat, too. However, Yang Gun's mind puts up a protective barrier and she sees the image of her grandmother again. The elderly woman slowly moves toward her granddaughter, but she is hindered by a giant rubber band tied around her waist. Yang Gun flies up to her grandmother and returns her denture. At this time, Il-sun struggles to keep the old woman from being pulled back by the slingshot-like rubber band. The grandmother asks her granddaughter to let her go because she is too tired and her back hurts so much. Despite Yang Gun's pleas to stay with her, the woman jumps out of her seat and the rubber band takes her straight to heaven. She never has time to tell her granddaughter the secret of her destiny. At a meeting with her mother, Yang Gun learns that her grandmother has left this world and has been cremated. She brought some of her ashes to the hospital as a keepsake for her daughter. All that is left of the dearest person in the girl's life is a small bag that reminds her of seasoning for food. In conversation, the woman takes no interest in Yang Gun's condition, but reprimands her for continuing to call herself a cyborg. The girl then realizes that her mother deliberately left her grandmother's denture at home so that the old woman wouldn't eat radishes in the nursing home and embarrass her. After all, the condemnation of others is a woman's greatest fear. Later, Yang Gun buries things in the hospital yard that remind her of her grandmother. She can't leave her denture in the ground, so she takes it back and clutches it fondly to her chest. Il-sun comes up to her, carefully wipes away her tears, and kisses the girl. She feels like she is taking off, and that magical kiss lasts into the evening. For the first time in a long time, Yang Gun smiles, but immediately collapses into a hungry faint. Il-sun can no longer watch his beloved slowly fade away, powered only by battery power. An ingenious plan arises in his mind to get the girl to eat human food without destroying her vision of the world. The boy sneaks into the technical room of the hospital and constructs a mechanical device, which he names the Rice Megatron, from a box containing a picture of his mother. Later, he convinces Yang Gun that the device is an adapter capable of turning rice into pure electrical energy. The girl looks at the Megatron with childlike interest and agrees to the implantation operation. At night, the couple sneaks into the boiler room to implant the device into Yang Gun's back. In fact, Il-sun puts on a little show, making the girl believe the implantation process is real. He draws a small door on her bare back, through which he is to enter the cyborg girl's control center. Using various tools and parts, he reproduces the sounds of the montage. During the operation, Yang Gun admits that she wants to thank the boy for his kindness, but she can't, since cyborgs are alien to feelings of gratitude. The next day in the canteen, Il-sun asks her friend to eat some rice to test the converter. The girl worries that the device will break inside her, but Il-sun gives her a homemade business card and promises a lifetime guarantee for his services. She then calms down and makes another attempt to eat. Everyone present freezes in anticipation. Thanks to the boy's encouragement, Yang Gun hesitantly brings a spoonful of rice to her mouth, chews it, and swallows. She feels as if the mechanisms inside her are working again and the incoming food is energizing her body. All the patients begin to run joyfully through the dining room, and Il-sun lovingly cuddles her friend's belly. He was able to understand Yang Gun's emotional world and embrace her values and goals. Unlike doctors, he has found a way to connect with her through words and electrical devices that she trusts. This event has a therapeutic effect on the boy himself as well. He finally lets go of his resentment toward his mother and buries the box with her picture in the courtyard of the hospital. Yang Gun comes to see the doctor and shares with her memories from her childhood. Her grandmother loved to listen to the radio that her granddaughter had assembled for her. The woman was at home all the time, completely disconnected from reality, and could only figure out the passage of time, thanks to the electric device. One day Yang Gun's mother came to visit, along with her aunt and uncle. They began to resent the horrible smell that pervaded the whole house. They were also unnerved by the volume of the radio and told Yang Gun to turn it off. The old woman tried to hide from her children like a mouse lurking behind the television set. The girl was angry at the adults and did not understand why they could not leave the old woman alone. She tried to stand up for her grandmother, but her radio accidentally shattered in the course of the argument. The adults then sent their mother to a nursing home, and Yang Gun didn't even get to say goodbye to her. At the end of her story, the girl finally reveals her big secret to the doctor and confesses that she is a cyborg. Much to her surprise, the psychiatrist doesn't yell at her for the truth, but hugs her and gives her a candy as a thank you. This is exactly the reaction the girl wanted from her mother. After a while, Il-sun helps her beloved interpret the words she read from her grandmother's lips. In her message, the old woman says that the goal of Yang Gun's existence is a nuclear explosion equal in power to 1 billion volts. Il-sun tells her friend that they would need a lightning strike for such an explosion. At night, during a violent storm, the couple escapes from the hospital. Once they reach the open countryside, they pitch a tent and set up a radio as a lightning rod. Yang Gun is insanely happy, because together with the lightning strike, she will fulfill her destiny. However, her friend cannot accept that she must leave this world at such a young age. In the midst of the storm, their tent is blown away, forcing them to hastily protect their food supplies. The girl notices that the rain is getting into a bottle of expensive wine and plugs the hole with her finger. She failed to see that Il-sun had earlier placed the missing cork on top of the makeshift lightning rod to protect her beloved from being struck by lightning. So the couple continues to stay under the pouring rain all night. Il-sun complains that his clothes are completely soaked and he doesn't mind taking them off. Yang Gun, who has been tensely waiting for the nuclear blast all this time, suddenly looks at her friend with interest. A lightning discharge, unrelated to the natural phenomena, passes between the cyborg girl and the kleptomaniac guy. Saturated with the energy of love, the couple meet the sunrise under the rainbow in each other's arms. Perhaps the nuclear explosion in Yang Gun's imagination was the only way to get rid of the unpleasant people on Earth. Like the ones who took her grandmother to the mental hospital and deprived her of her favorite radishes. But meeting Il-sun changed her mind and filled her life with love and understanding. These feelings are not inherent to a cyborg, but they push the girl to accept herself as human. Do you think the main characters can find healing in each other and return to normal life? Write your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like this video. See you next time.